It is well. In the last class, we had a talk on moksha sannyasa yoga. Well, it marks an end to the entire discussion of Bhagavad Gita. But today and the coming week, we are going to have a talk by Professor Das on dialectics in Bhagavad Gita. So this is the first part, rather we can say. The 29th lecture is on the dialectics in Bhagavad Gita, and this will continue in the 30th lecture too. So well, it's again a good part in Bhagavad Gita to understand what exactly dialectics that we have in Bhagavad Gita. Let's see how it goes. But before going to the talk of Professor Das, let us look into 3-4 important elements that we learned from Professor Das during the course of his last lecture. First thing he says that mind has a capacity to bind, and it is that mind which liberates. So mind is central to anything, and because it may bind you, it may also liberate you. So how you take the mind, that depends on your entire setup. So one thing. The next thing he said, a liberative mind sees a sort of freedom in any action, because a liberative mind there is no sense of agency then, because uh, um, in that status of mind, there is an equation of say nothing to gain and nothing to lose. There is an action, but in that action there is nothing to achieve, and there is also nothing to lose. So that action, if at all that is carried on, it is for the common well-being. So you don't have any personal take or loss in that. And he said one important thing, that normally we say wherever there is freedom, there is responsibility attached. But for a sannyasi who has taken the course of the path of who has set foot on the path of liberation, he experiences freedom in every moment, but he is not responsible for the action. Normally, we say if you have freedom, the freedom is attached with responsibility attached with your freedom. But for a yogi, a sannyasi who has no sense of agency, and he has totally surrendered himself before the divine, in all his actions, since there is no sense of agency, the entire responsibility is taken by the divine. It is not by the agent, but the divine takes the responsibility, and the agent experiences freedom without being attached to anything out there in this world. And he also said, in such a sannyasi, for such a yogi, the empirical and the transcendental, there is a smooth flow. There is no gap at all. So this is a good take that we had from him. And one more thing he said, he took the issues of artha and kama and also tried to show the relevance of both artha and kama, because they are purusarthas. But he said that artha and kama need to be guided in the lines of dharma, so that you can attain moksha. So this was what we learned from his lecture during his lecture in the last during his last lecture. Now let us move to Professor Das to learn what are the elements, what are the elements that constitute the dialectics in the study of Bhagavad Gita. Now to Professor Das for the lecture. Welcome, Professor Das.
Am I audible, sir?
Both are audible and visible.
Namaskar to all of you, respected Dr. Rao, very esteemed participants of this session. Today, I think this is the last session. So already the Gita lecture series that is over. So this is an extra session. We shall discuss about dialectical approach in the Bhagavad Gita. Before we come to discuss about the nature and feature of dialectics, first of all, we shall discuss what dialectics is not. Dialectics is a methodology, as analysis is a methodology, and there are different types of methods of philosophical activities. So dialectic is also a method. But what it is not, that is very much important. Then we can focus on the importance of dialectics. Dialectics is not just the dialogues between two persons. Two persons, they altercate, they argue about something, and also finally they come to the conclusion, come to an agreement, and we call it that it is a dialectic. Dia means two. So when two persons are involved in the process of argument, in the process of justifying same thing from different aspects, in the modes of dialogues, that is generally understood as dialectic. Socrates also followed this method, that in the marketplace, question is asked and answers are sought from the public. So that is also a method of dialectic. Through question answer, we ask some question, then we expect some answers. So through this interaction, where two persons are involved or many persons are involved, we can come to a conclusion, we can have an idea, a comprehensive idea about something. But this is not the exact meaning of dialectic. Similarly, dialectic does not mean dichotomism. Dichotomism means there are two opposite views, and these two opposite views, they remain opposite without having any reconciliation, without having any negotiation. They remain opposite. So that is not dialectic. Even we cannot understand dialectic mathematically and logically. If we do so, that is a very limited version of dialectic, we shall say, that is not holistic. For example, P or not P. P or not P. Here the middle ground is excluded. If we strictly think about this, that either P or not P, then it is logically sound. It is logically sound, but the purpose of dialectic is not fulfilled here. Similarly, P and not P, it is a contradiction. P and not P. We cannot put any empirical facts in this format, in this equation. And we cannot claim that this is a form of dialectic. If P, then we cannot accept not P. In the logical sense, in the mathematical sense, if we accept, then we shall commit a self-contradiction. Therefore, analytical statements are meaningless because they speak nothing. We are speaking about this empirical world when we are speaking about something that should speak something. If P is P, P is not P, P or not P, these statements are logically sound, mathematically sound, but they do not fulfill, they don't meet the purpose of dialectics. So in the broad sense, we shall understand dialectic that both P and not P can coexist without committing contradiction, without committing any logical oddity, without committing any inconsistency. Both P and not P can coexist. But this is not accepted in mathematics, in geometry, in logic. So this is an attempt to understand the empirical world from the totality, because every view is limited. Every view is limited by its own perspective. Suppose we speak about something affirmatively, positively, then naturally its negation remains as a counterpart. This is the Hegelian method of dialectic. Suppose we accept the thesis, naturally it becomes the part of the totality. If it is the thesis, then its negation is well inferred. It is not so far. We can imagine, we can think of the negation of all affirmations. If we affirm something, that it implies its negation. The negation is the other part. Then we shall come to the synthesis. So this is a way of dialectical thinking. But this way of dialectical thinking is not sufficient. Because thesis, then antithesis, then we got the synthesis. Synthesis is not the conclusion. Again it becomes the thesis. Then antithesis, then synthesis, that becomes thesis. So it goes in a circle, and finally we have to reach at a point forcefully which appears to be metaphysical, which appears to be non-empirical, which appears to be, it is logically sound, it may be logically sound, but it does not fulfill the purpose. What is the purpose? Why you are doing such things? Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, again thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And from this contribution of Hegel, Karl Marx developed his dialectical method. Hegel spoke about spiritualism and Karl Marx spoke about materialism, but the method is the same. But in the Bhagavad Gita, the real meaning of dialectic can be understood that the apparent contradictions like P and not P, existent, non-existent, or anything like that. We shall discuss so many polar concepts which are opposite to each other. They can coexist without having any logical audit. They appear to be contradictory, but they are not really so. So what is the method? How can we solve this problem? Here it is said that both P and not P can coexist if they are interpreted from different perspectives. P is true from one perspective and not P is also true from another perspective. Then there is no problem in affirming P and its opposite, P and not P. So this is a way of thinking, and this is also discussed in Jaina system, Satvad, that every view is relative. Every view is relative means every view is correct from a given perspective. From another perspective, this view will not fit. So, when we honestly interpret any concept from its appropriate perspective, that we can call it real philosophy. This is the real philosophical activity. Don't conclude exclusively or haphazardly, or don't engage yourself only in the process of analysis. So dialectic is not analytic. Dialectic method is not only analytic method, rather we can say dialectic is the analysis of the analysis. It is not just the analysis, it is the analysis of the analysis. Dialectic will analyze how we analyze. Dialectic will analyze the very process of analysis. How we are involved in analysis. How we do philosophical analysis. Is it merely logical? Is it mathematical? Or it is something more than it? Number one. Number two, dialectic is a form of consciousness. Suppose in Socratic method, two external persons are required for the exchange of thoughts in the form of a question and answer. That is the dialogue, that is the method of dialogue. There is speaker and another person will be the listener. But the same dialogue process can take place in one person. Monologue. Dialectic is also possible in monologue, not in dialogue, not in monologue. That means in one person, in one mind, we can have dialectical thinking. The two opposite thoughts can take place at the same time in a single human mind, the mind of a single thinker. That is possible. That means dialectic refers to a higher form of consciousness which can witness all the perspectives, all the possible perspectives. If we are ignorant of any perspective, if we ignore any perspective, because we are preoccupied by our memory, by our fond beliefs, by our own convictions. Anyway, if we ignore any perspective and we conclude something, then that conclusion is dogmatic. That conclusion, even that conclusion is not analytic. That is dogmatic. Analytic is better than dogmatic, and dialectic is the best. So when we ignore any perspective and we hastily come to a conclusion that this is the conclusion, like the 5 blind men, they were engaged with an elephant and they were trying to define elephant from their own perspectives. This is the situation of every man, every philosopher. A philosopher should not be confined to a particular view. This is the highest contribution of Jaina philosophy. A philosopher should have a free mind. He should not have, it is not the business of a philosopher, it is not the credit of a philosopher to nurture a particular view, to build a system. The moment a philosopher is confined to a particular view and he becomes a philosopher of a particular vada or view, that becomes only one pakhya. That becomes one-sided. So that is also a type of a dogmatic flow of thinking. That is not the job of a philosopher. That may be the job of a follower. If we are ready to follow Shankaracharya, then we can accept Advaita philosophy without having any dialectic approach in our minds. So we are the best follower, but we cannot be called a philosopher. A philosopher should not have a fixed view that this is my view, this is my system, and these are my followers. 1 lakh followers, 1 crore followers. That means my view is so important. No. That is not the job of philosophy, and that is not the credit of a philosopher. Similarly, a philosopher should not be engaged in uh, in analysis for nothing. That may be linguistic analysis, that may be conceptual analysis. For what you are doing, if it is not connected with your lifestyle, if it is not connected with the society, if it is not transforming yourself, then what for? What for analysis? Then what for this view, that view, this philosophy, that philosophy? What for such arguments? What for such debates? So dialectical approach that makes the very source of approach, that is human mind, free. And that is the goal of a human life. Man seeks freedom. Man seeks freedom. Freedom is the ultimate goal of human life. And that freedom is possible through wisdom. And wisdom is possible only through the dialectic method. Dialectic method means one should be very much impartial, holistic towards all the possible perspectives. If he fails to know all the perspectives, it is natural. It is natural because Immanuel Kant also said that we cannot know all perspectives because human mind is limited. Mind can know only the empirical perspective. So we can't know all the perspectives, that is natural. But we have to admit that. We have to admit that I can't know all the perspectives. So knowledge means the proper knowledge, the right knowledge, or wisdom means to know the limit of our knowledge. What is the limit of my knowledge? Is it really knowledge or my ignorance? So this mindset should be there. Don't fix your own limited thought with a very limited conclusion. That this is concluded. Don't stop at a point. So one thing can be interpreted from different perspectives. This is one achievement. One thing can be interpreted from different perspectives. Similarly, two things can be accepted from different perspectives. Similarly, many things can be accommodated, can be accepted from their respective perspectives. If we are ready for that, then we can be called as secular, we can be called holistic, we can be called neutral mind, we can call sthita prajna, we can be called as the man of wisdom. And that is the true spirit of a darshanika. That he has no problem with any perspective. If we really love analysis, then this should be the spirit of analysis. So here, the apparent contradictions like P and not P, A and not A can coexist. Mathematically, it is impossible. Logically, it is impossible. Analytically, it is impossible. But dialectically, it is possible. And if it is possible, therefore, in symbolic logic, we discuss about P and not P, and there is a metaphysics in symbolic logic. Both P and not P, they become the the universe of a discourse. That is 1. P plus P complement is equal to 1. 1 means the totality. So in order to understand 1, the total discourse, the totality, we have to understand all the possibilities. They may appear contradictory or contrary or anything like that. Something appears to be positive, that's all right. But naturally, its negation is there and we have to accept it. If we accept both affirmation and negation, then we can have a composite order, the highest order, the synthesis order, and there shall be a way for further thinking. Otherwise, we shall be trapped by the thesis or by the antithesis. Either one will become a theist or will become an atheist. One will become a materialist or another will become idealist. No. Don't be trapped by any ism and don't become an atheist, materialist, idealist, pragmatist. No. You are a philosopher. If you fail to apprehend, if you fail to understand the totality, then at least admit, like Immanuel Kant, at least admit that this is my limitation. Whatever I know from the empirical perspective. Then there is no problem. The moment you conclude that this is so and so from your own dogmatic thinking, from your so-called process of analysis, and also through linguistic analysis, then that is the problem. So it's very simple that in the empirical science, we can accommodate contradictory expressions together, which is not possible in logic or mathematics. So P and not P can coexist. And it is not logically odd. Tat ejati, tat na ejati, tat dure, tat antike. This is expressed in Isavasya Upanishad about the Brahman. Brahman is expressed in these apparent contradictory qualities, that you are far and you are near, you are moving and you are not moving. This appears to be contradictory. You exist and you don't exist. You are Sat and Asat. These expressions appear to be contradictory, but in the dialectic approach, we can interpret that both Sat and Asat can be interpreted as true from their respective perspectives. Thesis is accepted from its perspective and antithesis is also accepted from its perspective. That means all views can be coordinated. All views can be met together. There will be a reconciliation between all types of all possible views. And that is very unique in Bhagavad Gita. Life and death. Life and death. Quietism and activism. Don't work and work. Karma, vikarma, akarma. Freedom and surrender. Freedom and surrender. Determinism and freedom. these the unmanifest and the manifest, Sat, Asat, all these expressions, which very much, which appears to us like contradictory expressions, but in fact, they have been interpreted in the Bhagavad Gita that they are not contradictory. Both the elements, both the pakhya, the thesis and antithesis, the affirmation and negation are true from their own perspectives. Just I am giving some examples. Arjuna was confused. Arjuna was confused in the battlefield because he was confused about the nature of dharma. One is the dharma of a family, and the other is the dharma of the society or the community or the casteism or caste. So when Arjuna is saying that I am going to fight with my relatives, then I should not fight because my family dharma says that I should not fight with my relatives, with my family members, with my brothers, with my teachers for anything else. That may be property, that may be anything else. I may admit my defeat. I may be defeated. I admit my failure. But I should not quarrel with my family members because it goes against my family dharma. The other dharma is that the dharma of the society, that if you will not fight, then there will be decadence, there will be disorder, there will be adharma, and you will become responsible for that. So in order to protect the dharma, you have to fight against adharma. So this was the confusion. So here, the term dharma should be interpreted from two different perspectives. We should not commit any category mistake. Yes, Arjuna is right, very much right, from the perspective of a family dharma, that one should not encourage any type of quarrel, any type of war, fighting with family members, with any kinsmen. It is not good. But at the same time, he is also a Kshatriya. He is a fighter. He is a warrior. He represents the society. And he has the noble duty to protect his dharma. Protect dharma. If dharma is not protected, then the generation will not be protected. The very existence will not be protected. In that sense, he must fight. So, fight and not fight, that appears to be contradictory in the logical sense, in mathematical sense, but in the empirical sense, in the empirical way, we shall find that there is no such contradiction at all. So many examples. Telling truth is virtue. Telling lie is wise. Also virtue in some contexts. Because virtue, something is virtue, something is virtuous, this activity is virtuous, it cannot be taken as granted. It is the context that decides what to be done, what not to be done. So telling truth is good, telling lie is also good. So this appears to be contradictory. But that depends upon the situation, that depends upon the context, that depends upon the perspective, when to tell lie and when to speak the truth. Sometimes telling truth is a problem for us because it is a question of life and death. So we have to learn the contextual existence and the contextual necessity in order to practice the ethical code in our life. We can't take any ethical principle to be granted. If we do so, then that approach is a dogmatic approach. And that dogmatic approach cannot be compensated by mere analysis. That you just analyze that from this, from that, no. That way you can't satisfy yourself. You have to be established with that wisdom. Not only I analyze, I have to work. I have to do something. So in the battlefield, Arjuna was not taught mere analysis, linguistic analysis or conceptual analysis by Lord Krishna. Arjuna was there to do action. Whatever you understand, you have to translate that into action. So mere analysis is only psychological, that is only linguistic. By that you can understand the meaning of a word. But that is not helpful in your when the action is required. You have to act accordingly. And for that, we have to follow this dialectic approach. Not only I understand, but also I have to act accordingly. If I am convinced to fight, then I must fight. If I am not convinced to fight, I should not fight. So this is called, dialectic represents the higher form of rationality, which is more inclusive. Therefore, from that higher rationality, we can expect sympathy, empathy, love, compassion, forgiveness, everything. If our mind is only engaged in analysis of the concepts, then we can't culture such ethics in our life, in our practical life, in our practical activity. So wisdom is wisdom if it is translated into action. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Jnana, Karma, Bhakti, all these are discussed in details, because no discipline can be discussed, can be practiced without the other. If you have wisdom, then you must act accordingly and you must feel accordingly. Knowledge without proper feelings, knowledge without proper action is useless. Not only action and knowledge, but also we should have emotion, we should have feelings. feelings for our fellow beings. And all these three, Jnana, Karma and Bhakti, constitute our personality. He is a man of wisdom. That does not mean that he is a complete personality, because he has no feelings. He has no feelings for plants. He has no feelings for nature. He has no sense of sympathy, empathy, but a man of knowledge, man of wisdom, very knowledgeable, a great professor. But he is not a complete personality. So knowledge should be translated into action and feelings, cognitive, cognitive, and affective. These three faculties should be fulfilled, should be cultured in one personality. And Arjuna is that personality. Lord Krishna is trying to see that personality in Arjuna. That you are going to fight, that is action. But don't fight just like an action. Don't fight just as the reaction of your emotion. No. You have to understand dialectically. You have to understand dialectically, why should you fight? Why should you fight? You have to understand it. So don't fight out of animosity, and don't quit out of love. This approach is very much dialectical. You are advised to fight. You must fight, or the society will condemn you. Adharma will be established. You must fight. But you can't fight out of animosity. So it is not important whether you fight or not fight. It is important that what you understand. Because you have to give your complete self. Dialectic means the complete self, the complete understanding. When we are doing something, we should do it by investing our complete self. If you are a good personality, if you are a complete personality, Purna Bhaktitva, then you are qualified for an action. Then you are called a Karma Yogi. A Karmi and a Karma Yogi, there is difference. That person is only doing something whatever is ordered to him. It is a separate thing. But he is a Karma Yogi, means he has understood what karma is. And he has understood the dynamics of our karma, the types of karma. And his karma is disciplined by, backed by wisdom, jnana, and bhakti. So jnana is a perspective, bhakti is a perspective, karma is a perspective. So no perspective should be ignored. So whenever we do something. So it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, when action is done in the sense of duty, action is done in the sense of duty, that action will never bind us. If we shall compare it with Immanuel Kant, the deontological perspective, that categorical imperative, that if something is good, if something is your duty, then you must do it unconditionally. This is not so in the Bhagavad Gita. You are not just like an ATM machine that as I commanded, you just gave. Action should be done in the sense of duty. That's all right. But that is only one perspective. That is only one perspective. Whenever you are doing your duty, you have to understand your duty not according to your fixed laws, fixed principles, but according to the context. If you strictly, rigorously follow the Kantian method, categorical imperative, this should be done, so this must be done. This will not work in a very in the sense of totality. That cannot be our complete personality. We should have flexibility. So dialectic teaches us the flexibility. That means duty should be done for the sake of duty. This can be interpreted in a very wider sense. So in karma yoga, bhakti element will be added, jnana element will be added, contextuality will be added. No, this is duty in principle, but this is not my duty in this particular context. So context will decide the principle. We should have this idea, and we should be very much free. We should be very much aware of the changing phenomena. We accept, we claim that our knowledge is empirical. We can't have the knowledge of phenomena. We claim, but in practice we don't do that. If everything is subject to change, if this empirical world is empirical by nature, then we should have certain flexibility. If something is not meant for lokasangraha, even if it is called duty in the formal sense, by principle, mathematically, logically, we can do our action. Then that is mathematics. That is not ethics. Ethics demands our contextual response. Ethics demands the perspective, and that is also practiced in the court of law. In the court of law, when any case is tried by the advocates, and there is hearing, and there is judgment, every judgment is contextual, and every contextual judgment becomes a judgment, becomes a law, becomes a rule. So every exception becomes a rule. So human mind should be flexible for the exceptions. If this is the rule, what can be its exceptions? This is not deontological. This is not categorical imperative. If this is a rule, what can be its exceptions? In which perspectives we can avoid this rule? If we take all the perspectives into account, then only our approach will be called a dialectic approach. And our personality will be called a complete personality. Otherwise, we can only take the credit that he is a man of righteousness, that he is very strict, he is very rigorous. Whatever he thinks, he does. He is a man of a principle. Such credits we can gain in society. So the character of Lord Krishna is not that. The character of Lord Krishna is dialectic by nature because he knows Vishwarupa. Vishwarupa means metaphysically he knows all the perspectives which we don't know. Because he knows all the perspectives of reality, The person who knows the entire elephant, he is not blind. We are blind because we don't accept our blindness. We see the part, claim the whole. We see the part, claim the whole. The very simple thing is that duty should be done for the sake of duty. Who will decide what is your duty? This is the question. Yes, duty should be done for the sake of duty. If this is a duty, this should be done for the sake of duty. But who will decide that this is your duty? The context will decide. So in one context, it is my duty to tell lie for lokasangraha when there is a social benefit, because both truth and false by human calculation, human evaluation are illusory. If any statement has any meaning, it is only from a given perspective. Therefore, all perspectives are illusory. This is we shall come to that. If we are aware of the fact that everything is real from from a particular perspective, and if P is true from a given perspective and not P is also true from another perspective, then it is very much clear these both P and not P are false, because all perspectives are false from a higher point of view. If there is a perspective, that perspective is only empirically true. In Advaita Vedanta, it is called Vyavaharika Satta. Immanuel Kant called it empirical. It is empirical. This is meaningful in a society. This is meaningful in a community. This is meaningful in a particular religion. And if something is meaningful in a particular religion and meaningless in another religion, then both the statements are false. Because truth is that which is non-contradicted, satyam abadhitam. Whatever is truth, that is abadhitam, that cannot be contradicted by any other. This is the highest truth. If any truth is interpreted from different perspectives, that is only empirical interpretation. That is our empirical understanding. We have to understand if this is true from this perspective and that is also true from another perspective, then both the perspectives are false. So dialectical approach refines our rationality, rational thinking, the process of analysis. Man should understand the tools he uses. Man himself is also a form who is trying to understand the cosmos. So whenever the cosmos, whenever the reality is interpreted by man, it becomes human. So that human interpretation itself is a limitation. Secondly, we use our tools. Language is a tool. Conceptualization is a tool. By these tools, analysis is a tool. These are the methods by which man is trying to understand nature by human way. So human understanding is human only. Human understanding cannot be total. Dialectical approach says, just understand this. Just understand that human interpretation is only human. It cannot be the total. Because there are other perspectives. So both phenomena and noumena are to be accepted. Are to be accepted. And that has been accepted in West and East. That has been accepted in East by Shankara, that Jagat Mithya and Brahma Satya and Jagat Mithya. That does not mean Jagat is useless. Jagat is Mithya only from the empirical point of view. Jagat is not Mithya, Jagat is Mithya from the higher point of view, from the transcendental point of view, from the total point of view. But Jagat cannot be Mithya from the empirical point of view. That means the dialectic of Shankara is epistemological. It is epistemological. Dialectic of Kant is also epistemological. They are giving this method to understand that how far human mind can reach. And by the process that they came to know that the human mind can reach, can interpret, and whatever it is interpreted by human mind, that is only empirical. That does not mean this is the total reality. The total reality cannot be known through human mind. That does not mean that this is the total reality. Therefore, John Locke also said, I know not what. I know not what. Because the existence of substance must be accepted logically, because the qualities are there. Qualities can't exist without the substance. We fail to know, that does not mean that does not exist. I know, but not what. What that is, I don't know. But that must exist as the logical ground of this empirical base, empirical qualities. So my perspective interpretation cannot cancel out the totality. We have to accept this, and we have to respect all perspectives. That is secular thinking. We have to respect all religions, because every religion is meaningful from their own perspective. Every philosophy is meaningful from their own perspectives. Every man is meaningful from his own perspective. Every society is meaningful from his own perspective. Not that this society is good and that society is bad. Not that this philosophy is good and that philosophy is bad. Not that this religion is good and that religion is bad. In Karma Yoga, we are advised to do karma. You do karma because you can't stop karma for a single moment. Even you decide not to do karma, that is also karma. You are not doing karma is also a karma. So you can't stop doing action. You are bound to be engaged in action. Every moment you are physically, psychologically engaged with any type of, whatever action you do, you are physically and psychologically engaged. You can't stop it. But at the same time, you are also advised to follow a karma. So that appears to be contradictory. So what is the state of a karma? What is the state of a niskama karma? How can I do it? How niskama karma is possible without, how niskama karma is possible at all or how karma is possible without kamana? How is it? So this is a question to a karma yogi. Those who teach karma yoga, this is a question to them, that how can you preach that karma should be done without kamana? Because it is the kamana that generates karma, that inspires karma, that motivates karma. So how can you speak of niskama karma? If niskama karma is there, if you are not responsible for your action, if you are merely an instrument, if God is the real agent of your action, then you don't need to do any action. That is quietism. That means you should quit. You should not do any action. No. But you have to do action, because without action, you can't exist. But whenever you do, niskama karma means, niskama karma is misinterpreted as karma without kamana. This is a very misconception. This is not the meaning of niskama karma. That karma without kamana. Etymologically, that sounds so. Etymologically, it means that. But this is not the real interpretation of niskama karma. When karma is done in the sense of duty, when karma is done in the sense of duty, niskama karma has 5 points. Karma should be done in the sense of duty. Karma should be done for the welfare of the mass, welfare of the lokasangraha. Karma should be done without the sense of agency. Without the sense of agency means with ego, I am doing. There is no necessity of any claim that I am doing. Now I am speaking. It is not necessary that in the course of my speech, 10 times, 20 times I shall utter, I am speaking. But it's not necessary. So don't have that sense of agency. And whenever you are doing an action, you just surrender, because you surrender means when at the moment you surrender your ego, you can do the best work. You can have complete concentration on your action. And niskama karma is that whatever you do from your free will, whatever you do from your free will, with freedom. So nowhere it is, and niskama karma is also that when the action is done without having expectation about the consequences. This is also misunderstood by many. How can we do an action without having any expectation from the consequences? You should have orientation. You should have an orientation. You should have a planning about your action, because without that, you can't do any action. But in course of your action, don't overthink about expectations, about the consequences. Don't overthink. Don't be disturbed by the flow. Don't be disturbed by the unnecessary thought of the consequences, which will follow naturally without your consent. That will follow. If you do an action, the consequence must follow. Before doing that, you must have the orientation. You must have a plan. But in the course of action, don't be disturbed by the extra thought of the consequences. This is the meaning of saying that don't expect the consequences. You don't have a right over the consequences, means consequences are not under your control. Consequences will follow as per the nature of your action. If your action is disturbed, then you are disturbing the consequences. Don't disturb your action. Focus on your action. Complete your action. Consequences will follow accordingly. If you are disturbing your action by thinking about the consequences, then you are determining the consequences. That means you are inviting your desired consequences by your own way. So action will invite consequences. So don't invite consequences without doing action. Just concentrate on your action, consequences will follow. This is niskama karma. Do something good for others. Do something in the sense of duty. Whenever something is done in the sense of duty, there is no ego. There is no sense of consequence. There is no failure, no success. This is the meaning of niskama karma. Niskama karma does not say that you will have no kamana for karma. Without kamana, no karma can be done. Therefore, kama is also a purusartha. That is an empirical value. Artha and kama, these two are empirical values. Mukhya is the transcendental value because nobody can claim that I attend Mukhya. Nobody can claim. When one attends Mukhya, he becomes one with the divinity. There is no claim. In that sense, that is transcendental. So dharma is the bridge between this empirical reality and transcendental reality. So when artha and kama, they are regulated by dharma, one attends mukhya. Therefore, dharma is linked with empirical and trans-empirical. Therefore, dharma can be both categorical and categorical. In that sense. So, we have to be in the dialectic approach, we have to be very much careful about the reality as well as the appearance, about the unity as well as the diversity, about the paramarthika satta and the vyavaharika satta, about the constancy and the change. If we are biased by the absolute and we can't cope with the change, we fail to live in the world of diversity, then it is a dogmatic approach. It is a dogmatic approach. Therefore, all great seers who have attained enlightenment, they have returned to the world of diversity. They have returned. They return because they don't want to be dogmatic by their approach. Therefore, attachment and detachment, this is also dialectic. Attachment and detachment, both are possible by a complete personality. The person who has a complete personality, he can live with both attachment and detachment. Tena tektena bhunjita. That means you are free to be attached with anything you like, but be careful. You should have a sense of vairagya. You should have a sense of detachment. If you are attached without the sense of detachment, then you are dogmatic. If you are detached without being involved in the empirical world, practical world, lokasangraha, then you are also dogmatic. So dialectic rejects all dogmatic approaches. Don't be dogmatic either this way or that way. The absolute is necessary, the understanding of the absolute is necessary, and the understanding of relativity is also necessary. The understanding of phenomena is necessary, and the understanding of a phenomena is necessary. Therefore, Immanuel Kant spoke of two types of reason, pure reason and practical reason. Because if we are only confined with one type of religion and we conclude our philosophy, that is dogmatic, that is not critical. Critical philosophy is that philosophy which criticizes any one particular perspective. It is a negative approach. But dialectic is a positive approach to hold all the possibilities together. Yes, phenomena is accepted from phenomenal perspective. Noumena is accepted from the noumenal perspective. The unmanifest and the manifest. There is another dialectic, Saguna and Nirguna. Many philosophers, they are satisfied with Nirguna Brahma. Many philosophers, they are satisfied with the Saguna Brahman. But in Bhagavad Gita, both Saguna and Nirguna are given importance. Nirguna is necessary, that is the state of wisdom. Nirguna, the understanding of Nirguna indicates our wisdom. But our living with Saguna indicates our bhakti, our emotion, our action. Nirguna is wisdom. That everything is, this jagat is relative, everything is relative. The ultimate truth is that. This is wisdom. But where we shall live? We shall live in this empirical world of changes. So here bhakti and karma are also necessary. Otherwise, we can't have a complete personality. So dialectic is a higher form of consciousness which can witness all possible thoughts, all possible rational approaches. And that is possible in one human mind. And that is possible through an individual. It is not necessary. Dialectic means there must be two persons and there will be an exchange of dialects. No. In spirituality, that is the higher state of consciousness where there is a debate between different levels of mind. The lower mind is asking question, the higher mind is answering. Again, the lower mind is confused, the higher mind is giving answer. So Lord Krishna and Arjuna, they are symbolic in the battlefield. The battlefield is symbolic. Lord Krishna is symbolic. Arjuna is symbolic. Actually, Lord Krishna and Arjuna, they are two dialectic poles in our rational mind. My mind is the mind of Arjuna, who is confused, who is asking questions. And in my mind, there is a possibility of Lord Krishna, the higher consciousness, who is giving the answer. It happens to all of us. Sometimes we get angry, and after some times we understand, oh, that was my fault. So when we understand our fault, that is a higher consciousness that can understand the activities of lower consciousness. So the apparent contradictions, fight, not fight, karma, akarma, or karma, niskama karma, similarly, attachment, detachment, these are all apparent contradictions. Both attachment and detachment are spiritual sadhana. If one is only detached from this empirical world, then he is useless. He is useless. He has no value in this life. If you are really detached, then you are only qualified to be attached with the empirical world. So be attached with the sense of detachment. That is Vairagya. Vairagya does not mean only detachment. Vairagya means we have to know the skill of attachment with the sense of detachment. Yoga karmesu kausalam. That kausala is yoga. We have to know the skill. We have to know the skill of involvement. We have to know the skill of attachment, and that is possible when we understand its opposite, that is detachment. That is detachment. Similarly, freedom and surrender. This is the another. Just I shall finish with 5 minutes. Freedom and surrender. Another dialectic also, freedom and determinism. Freedom and determinism. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita that whatever we are the product of our old vasana, our past vasana. That means we are determined by our past thoughts, past vasana. So how can we speak of, think of freedom? If every moment I am determined by my past sanskara, past karma, past thoughts, then I am determined. But at the same time, I claim that I am free. I am nitya mukta. I am free, and my goal is to attain freedom. How can I attain freedom when my very existence is determined by my past? These two positions can be discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. And these two positions are equally true from their own perspectives. Yes, it is true that we are determined. Yes, it is true that we are free. So we are free even when we are determined. That means we are determined. There is determining force which pulling us towards our vasana, but at the same time we have a sense of freedom to excel, to go beyond, to transform. So these two, determinism and freedom, can go together. In spite of, not because of, in spite of our conditionings, in spite of our determining factors, we have to be free from it. We have to excel. We have to transform. We have to grow and glow in our life. And one day will come, we shall become Jivana Mukta. Jivana Mukta is a state where all the previous sanskaras, the predetermined vasanas are destroyed. And we are living freely in this life. That is Jivana Mukta. When the life cycle, that I shall not take any further body, I shall not come into the cycle of birth and death. That is Vidya Mukti. That is the ultimate freedom. So that part is something different. Minimum Jivana Mukta is guaranteed because of our freedom. If we shall exercise our free will, if we shall love our freedom, if we really have Shraddha for freedom, then we can become free and we can become a Jivana Mukta. And that is possible through Jnana, Karma and Bhakti. The another point is freedom and surrender. Sarva dharman paritejya mamekam saranang braja. This is the highest pronouncement in the Bhagavad Gita. Highest teaching. Sarva dharman paritejya mamekam saranang braja. This is taught in the last chapter, when all the 17 chapters are already discussed. Jnana is discussed, karma is discussed, bhakti is discussed, dhyana is discussed. Everything is discussed. 7 types of yoga have been discussed. And after having all qualifications, when Arjuna understood everything, when Arjuna understood everything, when he is ready to fight, at that moment he said, Sarva dharman paritejya mamekam saranang braja, you surrender before me. And you can surrender only when you are free. If you are not free, if you are not free to surrender, you can't surrender. That surrender is not surrender. In order to surrender, the first qualification is you have to be free. This is a dialectical statement, because generally we understand, if I am free, I shall never surrender. If I surrender, I become a slave. No. If you are really free, you can surrender. That means you have to be, only that person can surrender. Surrender means only that person can reach the higher self, can transform to the higher self when he is free from the lower self. The moment you are not free from your lower self, you cannot reach the higher self. That means you cannot surrender before the higher self when you are not free from your lower self. You are not free from your ignorance. You are not free from your vasana, your ego, everything. So freedom means freedom from your ignorance, freedom from your ego sense, freedom from your vikarma, freedom from your passion, freedom from your worldly allurements, attachments. Then only you can surrender. So here freedom and surrender, as we generally understand that they are opposite to each other. If one is free, he will never surrender. If one surrenders, he becomes a slave. This position is not there in the Bhagavad Gita. Only that person can surrender who is free, who is absolutely free, who has a free mind. So Lord Krishna taught 17 chapters to Arjuna only to make his mind free. Then he advised to surrender. Now are you free? Are you free from confusion? Are you free from any type of a disappointment? Are you free from despair? Are you free from any types of wrong attachment? Are you free from ignorance? If yes, then you surrender. Then you surrender. Then you can only surrender if you are really free. And if you surrender, then you are free to fight or not to fight. I am your teacher, but don't go by my advice. Don't become trapped by my advice. Even you become free from your teacher. You become free from your source. I am your teacher. I have taught you everything. But now this is the time you attain ultimate freedom, that you should be free from myself. And you now decide whether you will fight or not to fight. You are not forced. You are not bound to fight because I am telling you, because I am convincing you. You have to be convinced by yourself. And that conviction will be attained by a complete personality through dialectic approach. Through dialectic approach means the mind that is very much neutral, very much impartial to all the perspectives. If dharma is to be protected, then the dialectic mind will never see who is committing dharma or dharma. If my duty is to protect dharma, then my analytic mind will see, oh, he is my father, I have certain obligations for him. So I have certain duty for my family. So father may be excused. But the dialectic mind will think, no, if dharma is to be protected, whoever will commit adharma, he should be punished, and I shall fight against him. Because dharma is to be protected. I am here in the battlefield, not as Arjuna, not anybody's son, not anybody's brother, not anybody's student. I am here as the protector of dharma. Dharma rakyati rakhitaha. If I protect dharma, then dharma will be protected. If dharma will be protected, then I shall be protected. So we shall protect each other. Similarly, rationality will be protected. Rationality will be protected by the dialectic approach. Rationality cannot be protected by analytic approach, by any dogmatic approach. Real rationality is the rationality of a dialectic. Real rationality is the understanding of all possible perspectives. It is not possible. It is not possible. It is not possible to understand all possible perspectives. But at least we have to understand, like Immanuel Kant, like Shankaracharya, like Mahavira Jina, and like many great philosophers, we have to admit that this is the limit of our understanding. And this is only true from this perspective, and its opposite can be true from another perspective. Mind should have that flexibility. Otherwise, mind is not rational. We claim that we are rational human beings, but somehow or other we are trapped by any superficial rationality. So the apparent, and another dialectic was there, I shall discuss some other day, that is life and death. It will take long time. That life and death both are same. That appears to be opposite to each other, but life and death both are same in the battlefield. We shall discuss that on some other occasion. So here karma, the quitism and activism, whether you should quit your karma or you should be involved in karma, these two go together. You have to do karma, and at the same time, you have to do niskama karma. You should have attachment, but at the same time, you should know how to be attached with a sense of detachment. You have to be free, and at the same time, you have to surrender. You have to surrender, at the same time, you have to be free. So, when mind becomes all-inclusive, it includes, the all-inclusive mind includes all possibilities. That is the form of a higher consciousness. So in Indian tradition, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, dialectic is understood as the higher form of consciousness. It is not mere analysis. It is not mere dialogues. It is not merely criticism. It is not merely dichotomy. It is the form of higher consciousness which not only analyzes different possible perspectives, it also inspires us to transform our personality, ordinary personality, to a Purna Bhaktitva or a complete personality. So by the dialectic approach, by the dialectic way of thinking, our being becomes transformed to a higher being. Our lower consciousness transforms to the higher consciousness. So dialectic thinking is directly connected with our living, our transformation, our bondage and liberation. This is the merit point of dialectic in Indian tradition, and it is different from Western way of thinking. They use dialectic in very logical sense, epistemological sense, and analytical way. But in Indian tradition, it is something different. It is a higher form of consciousness. Thank you. This is my submission. This is thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Das, for yet another nice lecture. Well, very nicely you have made a distinction.
Dr. Rao,
Yes.
this is something new topic in Bhagavad Gita. So before question and answer, please just summarize my talk within two or 3 minutes.
Okay.
I shall be obliged.
Yes. Okay, I'll do that. What Professor, actually there is no idea of synopsis, but I will try to synopsize what Professor Das tried to say. He tried to make a distinction between what a dialectic is and how it is different from a dialogue. And also he tried to see how Indian dialectics that we find in Bhagavad Gita is totally different from the dialectic idea that we find in Hegel. And also he tried to see a dialectic method in a totally different sense, quite distinct and different from the logical patterns and the mathematical patterns. What does this mean? He was talking about the dialogue pattern, the question and answer methodology that Socrates used to follow in the streets of Athens. Now, that is not exactly dialectic, which Professor Das tried to point out. And he also said that the contradictions in logic, they also do not constitute a sort of dialectic. And even the excluded middle cases, P or not P, is not dialectic. Now, coming to Hegel, he said the Hegelian pattern wherein thesis and antithesis are combined together to have a synthesis. Now, that synthesis has no sense in the pattern that we see in Bhagavad Gita, because the synthesis that we find in the Hegelian trend again can become a thesis to have a further antithesis, and this process will go on. But if we look at the Bhagavad Gita, wherein Professor Das has tried to point out various so-seeming contradictions, but these contradictions can coexist. He talked of Nirguna Saguna. He talked of the manifest and the unmanifest. He talked of the empirical and the transcendental. He talked of freedom and surrender. So these are the various contradictions. He talked of attachment and detachment. They look contradictory, but he says they can coexist in the lines of Bhagavad Gita. And very nicely has tried to do so by saying that a sthita prajna can be in the world of the manifest and also can be in the world of unmanifest. He can see both of them without any contradiction. He can see the Nirguna and he can experience the Nirguna and he can see the Saguna without any contradiction. That is the dialectic pattern that we find in the Bhagavad Gita. He talks, logically speaking, he says P and not P cannot hold together, they are contradictory, but he says P can be true and not P can also be true in the dialectics of Bhagavad Gita, because the Sthita Prajna sees P and also not P, but transcends both of them. So that is the logic that we find in the Bhagavad Gita. He is neither attached to P nor attached to not P. He is neither attached to the Nirguna nor attached to the Saguna. He believes in Nirguna and also the Saguna, but he transcends both. He believes, he has the experience of the unmanifest and also of the manifest, but he transcends the both. So there is no contradiction at all. So this is the dialectics that we find in the Bhagavad Gita, and very nicely researched by Professor Das, quite distinct and quite appreciable, because this is the dialectic that we have, a trend where the opposites can coexist without any contradiction, because the Chitta Prajna can be in the opposite standpoints, be in the opposites by transcending both, because he is not attached to any one of them. So that is the point that Professor Das wants to make, and I tried. It can be expanded, but it is the brief synopsis of the gist of what Professor Das tried to say. Thank you for the lecture. Now, if anybody wants to make any suggestion or any question, they are welcome. But in the meantime, let me check the chat box if there is any question in the chat box. Okay, so Lipun Behera, I don't know whether he's a student or I don't know, but the question, what I understand, well, it is not a clear question, but what I understand is, I have my own thought. I have my own thought. I have my own thinking. What do people think? Whether that constitutes a dialectic. So you have a thinking process. You carry on an act according to your thinking. What do people think? If you bring that into issue, whether that constitute a dialectic. Professor Das, how do you say this? What do people think?
No, please clarify this question for me.
Yes, actually, the question is not clearly typed. Maybe he's a student, but what I could understand, the logic behind the question is, I have my thinking. Okay, I carry on and act according to my thinking. What do people think? Suppose I am talking to you, I am talking as per my thinking.
No, yes, I got.
What do people think? Whether that constitutes a dialectic?
Then that is subjective only. Where if you are your thought, and if you are satisfied with your thought, that is the natural behavior of our people. That is the crisis today. We are confined to our own thought. We are confined to our own dogmas. Yes, I have a thought. I developed a thought, but I should be critical about my thought. Very impartially. I shall become the object of my own judgment. I am the judge of my own judgment. I should be critical. That is the great contribution of Immanuel Kant. Be a critic of yourself. Be a critique. What I am, that is called Atma-samikya. That is called self-criticism, self-analysis. Analyze yourself. Think and overthink. Think and think again and again. Think, rethink and rethink. So if you think and you are satisfied with your thought, then animals also do that. That is animal thinking. That is not human thinking. Human thinking should be dialectic by approach. Human thinking should be critical. Human thinking should be analytic. These are the different layers of thinking. Dogmatic thinking, analytical thinking, critical thinking, dialectical thinking. So that depends upon our culture. And this is a very great sadhana when we become able to criticize ourselves. Self-criticism, self-examination is very much necessary. If I am my thought, that is dogmatism. Okay, that should not be. Because we are all rational human beings. Whatever I think, that may be wrong. That may be from one perspective. Therefore, people don't have sympathy and empathy. Therefore, people lack love and compassion. Because they think, what they think is right. Therefore, there is quarrel between husband and wife. Therefore, there is animosity between colleagues, faculty members in a department. No, this is my thought, this is my perspective, and I may be wrong. This is your perspective, you may be wrong. So let us sit together and discuss. That is very holistic. That is the real rationality. In dialectic approach, there is another beautiful point. Here, no pakhya, no contesting party wants to win. I may be defeated, but I want to reach the truth. Dialectical approach is meant for attaining or realizing the truth. There is no question about defeat and success. I don't want to be successful in my argument. No, please defeat me. Please criticize me if I am wrong. This is the approach of dialectic. I want to see my limitation. Please, anybody who is more qualified than me, please try to show me my mistakes. This humble attitude is the dialectic attitude. Otherwise, we are dogmatic or analytic. Analytic means unnecessary engagement with language and concepts. That is not so good. Dogmatic means only holding your idea, your preoccupied thoughts, and you are satisfied. Critical means you are only criticizing others, that you are wrong, you are wrong, you are wrong. Dialectic means to know your own limits, to know your own ignorance, to invite the counter perspectives, to be defeated. I am ready to be defeated. If anybody, here I does not mean I. This is the qualification of a pakhya. So there is really no pakhya and vipakhya. Both are pakhya. And there is a trial, there is an attempt to attain the truth. Not that this advocate was successful and this advocate was no. This is not the way of dialectic. Be very much impartial, very much free. Free thinking is another aspect of dialectic thinking. You should have free thinking. You don't become your own party. You don't become your own part. Throw yourself to the truth. I want to know the truth. I don't want to establish myself. Professor Hudanand Rai was speaking very beautifully that in the jungle, two branches collided each other. The one branch is pakhya and the other branch is vipakhya. Contesting parties, they collided each other and they got fire and both the branches burned. They were burned. So pakhya was burned, vipakhya was burned. In our village, two persons were quarreling for, contesting for one coconut tree. That coconut tree is still alive. That is there in our village, but both of the contesting parties are dead. So that should be the attitude of a rational thinker. That whatever I am thinking, that may be wrong, that may be true from my perspective, from my subjective perspective, from the perspective of my fond beliefs, from the perspective of my conviction, from the perspective of my religion, from the perspective of my society, from the perspective of my attachment for my relatives, as Arjuna was confused. Arjuna's wisdom was trapped by the perspective of the attachment for his relatives. Thought should be free from all perspectives. I am speaking in only one sentence. A perspective-free mind can see all perspectives neutrally, impartially. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. What people think, you cannot change them. But if you are comprehensive enough with your thinking, even having an open mind to incorporate the opposition, then there is no opposition at all. Because you cannot change what the people think. You have no control over them. But you have the control over yourself that whatever people think, let them think, and that is from a perspective, and that perspective, if at all, is a perspective, and that is acceptable. So if that is the pattern, so both the opposites can coexist, and you can go free without any sense of attachment to any of the party. But once you think, if I'm speaking, oh, when I'm speaking, am I speaking wrong? Will people criticize me? If I go on thinking like this, I will miss the point of speaking what I wish to speak. So there lies the problem. So the resolution comes in the dialectics when let there be an opposition, if at all there is an opposition, and that opposition, if it lies, it is acceptable to me. So if that is the position, I am a free man, free from any opposition, free from any trend, and I am what I am. So that would be the justification to this. Thank you, Professor Das. Now, if we move to the next question, it is by Prabhat Naik. He says whether the dialectics that you talk of in Bhagavad Gita, is it a dialectic of the metaphysical opposites? Whatever the contradictions, whatever the oppositions that you talk of, are they the metaphysical absolutes?
Yes, not only metaphysics. I discussed dialectics.
Are they metaphysical absolutes? He says absolutes. Underline that absolutes.
What he is saying, I can't understand. But I just giving my response that I discussed dialectic in the Bhagavad Gita not only from metaphysical standpoint, but also from epistemological standpoint, moral standpoint.
What you have discussed, that is fine, very good, very nicely done. The point that you want to raise is the oppositions that you make, say nirguna, saguna, say manifest and unmanifest, are they absolute? Are they absolute? How do you take them? How are they absolute? That is the point that you want to see. Are they absolute?
Are they absolute? I don't I don't follow this question.
Follow this in the sense when you say that you can stay with P, you can stay with not P. Now he says, is the nirguna, when you talk of nirguna and when you talk of saguna, whether you are taking nirguna in the absolute sense when you talk of nirguna.
Oh yes.
That is the point that he wants to make.
Yes. That is in the absolute sense. Because any moment we speak of relativity, I surprise. How can you talk about relativity without reference to the absolute? It's logically if you speak of relativity, that implies that there is something absolute. Therefore, we are discussing about relativity. Immanuel Kant did that. Immanuel Kant said that our mind can reach only the phenomenal world. What does it prove? It means that there is a nominal world which may not known by. I told also about John Locke. He also said that I know, but not what. I know that the substance is, but I can't describe it. How can I know? I know from the qualities. So we have to accept both the unmanifest and manifest expressions of our society, of our personality, of the empirical reality. Otherwise, we shall be condemned by our freedom as existentialist
जी
philosophers.
project.
Yes, we should have understanding of both the absolute and relative. If we have only the knowledge of relativity from the scientific point of view, from the point of view of a perceptual knowledge, then we are limited. We may be called as scientific, but that is not our complete personality. Similarly, if we are only convinced of the absolute and we are not pragmatic in the pragmatic world, then that is also our failure. Therefore, our understanding should be all inclusive. That should include all perspectives. Absolute should be interpreted in the absolute sense. Relativity should be interpreted in the relative sense. This is my submission.
Thank you, sir. What I could see from the question and from your response is,
But what we do? But what we do? We superimpose the absolute on the relative. That is our adhyasa, and the relative to the absolute. We should not do that. Absolute is absolute. Relativity is relativity. We should understand relativity from the relative perspective. We should understand the absolute from the absolute perspective. Every language has its own game. If we are using language, we have to know its rules. We have to know its. Similarly, every understanding has its own feelings. If we are talking about religion, talking about metaphysics, we should apply our practical reason, as Kant said. We can't understand that by this pure formal reason. We can't understand. By formal reason, you can do your other job. So we have to understand what we are doing, what is our job, what we are dealing with. If we are dealing with metaphysics, our language should be different, our feelings should be different, our understanding should be different. If we are dealing with the phenomenal world, the empirical world, our behavior, our language, our approach should be accordingly. That is the point. We should not superimpose one on another. That is mistake. Thank you.
let's realize the empirical for whom? For Sthitaprajna. Because he stays in both and he sees no contradiction in any of them. Why there is no contradiction? He is in the transcendental and he is in the empirical, but he transcends both of them. So there is no contradiction involved. So everything turns absolute in its own standpoint, but again transcending both the standpoints. Thank you, sir, for the response.
Sir,
Yes.
my being a father, is contrary to my being a brother, contrary and contradictory. My being a father is contrary to my being a brother, my being a husband, my being a teacher. I am playing different roles. These are all my relative personalities, relative manifestations. But every time I return to myself, suppose I am with my wife, then I am playing the role of husband. Then I return to my own self and I am attached with my son as a father. I return to myself and I become attached with my student. So where I am returning? I am returning to that Nirguna self. I am Mr. Nobody. I am everybody. I am a father, I am a teacher, I am a husband, I am a brother, I am a citizen. I am everybody. But every moment I am returning to my nobody, that I am nobody. And I should have that sense. If I lack any one of. If I lack the sense of nobody, then that is that is dogmatic attachment. If I lack everybody, only I am nobody, then that is also a dogmatic spiritualism. Dogmatic spiritualism. So dialectic makes us free from dogmatic, dogmatic, dogmatic materialism and dogmatic spiritualism. We should not be dogmatic by our spiritual approach that I am only absolute, I am nirguna, I am a sannyasi, I have renounced the world, I have no social obligation. This is nonsense. This is dogmatic spiritualism. Similarly, I am not only empirical, I am doing my duty as a father. I am not a father. I am doing my duty as a teacher. I am an instrument. I am not Arjuna who is fighting with Karna. I am an instrument. I am protecting my dharma. So one should not be trapped by any pakhya. That is dialectic. Dialectic has two pakhyas or many pakhyas, but one should not be trapped by any pakhya. One should be, even my enemy. Enemy means vipakhya. There is no enemy. Enemy means vipakhya. If my vipakhya, the person who is speaking opposite to me, is telling the truth, I should embrace him. I should congratulate him. I should accept him as my teacher, that I learned from you. This is the attitude of dialectic. Okay, so this is that is true rationality. If rationality does not help you transform to the higher rationality, then that is dogma. That is a human possibility. Therefore, man is second to God. We have that, and that is a spiritual sadhana. So here in dialectic approach, we are speaking against spiritualism, that it should not be dogmatic, where nobody will dare to speak against spiritualism. But in dialectical approach, we can speak so. Even spiritualism is challenged, is questioned, if it is dogmatic by approach. Okay. So take everything, accept everything, respect everything from their respective perspectives. And this is possible by a perspective free mind. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, sir, thank you. So, the main thing that Kam says from the assertions that he made that I'm everybody and I'm nobody, though they look to be apparently contradictory, but for a man of wisdom or a sthita pragya or man of complete knowledge or complete wisdom, there is no contradiction because he is not attached to any of them. He lands in both of them, but again he is free from both of them. So he is in both the points, but again transcending the both. So there is no contradiction, though it appears at a normal, for a normal man, as if there is a contradiction between the statements. I am everybody and I am nobody, but there is no contradictions involved for Sthita Pragya because he elevates, he transcends both the standpoints, and to be not to be attached to any one of them. He sees both the standpoints, he acknowledges both the standpoints, he recognizes them, he accepts the validity of both, but at the same time, he transcends the both. So there is no contradiction whatsoever that is involved there. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
we don't have any, I don't see any more questions in the chat box. If anybody wants to say something, we have.
We shall, sir, should we conclude now?
Yes, we'll conclude now. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so we should conclude now. Well, I request Swarna Tripathi madam to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Namaskar to all. I thank all the participants for participating in the lecture series of Bhagavad Gita.
Madam, are you there?
You continue. You are audible. Hmm. You are not audible. You are not. Sir, she's audible, sir.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Aha.
Okay, okay.
Now audio. Microphone muted again. Madam, put on your microphone. Madam, put on your microphone.
Namaskar to all. Am I audible?
Yes, madam. Yes, yes, yes.
I thank all the participants for participating in the lecture series of the Bhagavad Gita. I extend my deep sense of gratitude to all the participants. This was the last session of the Gita lecture series. Here we came to an end of our discussion with the dialectics of the Bhagavad Gita. Dialectics appear to be contradictory, but that really brings a resolution of all thought, dynamics, and socio-cultural conflicts. The journey of total 29 lecture series ended successfully with the wisdom of Pramod sir and wonderful coordination of Dr. K. M. Narayan Rao sir. We shall start our next session on Western philosophy from 7th November. We invite all of you to attend and participate in the discussion. Thank you all. Pranam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Swarna madam, for organizing this series so nicely. It was a successful webinar series, and really people got benefited by this, by students and teachers alike got benefited by this, and thank you for organizing this. Now, today we had the last session in the series, so we are ending up this series, and it's an announcement for all of you that we are having a 3 weeks break, and then on from 7th of November, we are starting a series, a lecture series, a webinar series on the Western philosophy, starting from back onto Hegel. Okay, so please attend. Maybe we'll some good things, some new things will come up to the fore. That would be helpful to all of us. With these words, I request all of I thank all of you for making this webinar series so successful, and I request all of you to attend the webinar series on Western philosophy starting from the 7th of November. So thank you all, and with this I say have a good time in philosophy family, attend to the lectures, and keep questioning. That would really make us grow in this family. So thank you all. Good night, everybody. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now the meeting is closed. Thank you all.